Mitsurugi has been a huge buff for Ogdoadic, lending us some incredible reptile bosses to end on, so today I'm going to show you a few different ways to build the deck, and at the end I will walk through 3 different 1.5 card combos that bridge the gap between your Ogdoadic and Mitsurugi cards. Hello and welcome, my name is Dayhalov, and this is my Mitsurugi Ogdoadic deck profile. Saji is great, searching out a back row on summon or tribute, with Kusanagi recovering any Mitsurugi card from banishment or grave on tribute or summon as well. Obviously one starts our plays, we want more of them, but that one Kusanagi is critical. For our rituals, we play 2 Ame because it's the more aggressive card, and it's just nice to open. Ritual decks are inherently 2-card combo decks, and while Mitsurugi Ritual allowing you to tribute from deck alleviates this, you still ideally want to start your plays with a pairing of Ritual plus Ritual Monster. This also allows you to tribute Ame for things such as prayers to get your plays started for that extra search, while still being able to search and summon one later in the turn. Futsu revives every time your opponent special summons, meaning we're able to summon back lots of different reptiles and recur advantage during the opponent's turn, as well as accessing the great effect and battle destruction prevention of Kusanagi and Saji. Ritual can be used twice per turn, once to summon from hand, tributing from deck, and the other to summon from deck, tributing from hand or field. Obviously incredible. Maybe the strongest ritual spell ever made, the only restriction being it does require that you tribute exact levels of reptiles. 3 prayers searches, and gets us extra swarming, as well as helping to trigger our Mitsurugi Ritual Monster effects. Since it's a quick play, it can also be used to dodge targeting, so keep that in mind when using the card. Great Purification is just an Omni Negate that allows you to, by tributing a level 5 or higher reptile, negate and destroy a card effect. It also has another effect, allowing you to target a reptile in your graveyard, special summon it, and tribute another you control. You can only use 1 per turn, so we only rely on the 1, but having that recursion for the follow-up is very nice. 3 Snake Rain. While this card actually doesn't do very much for Mitsurugi itself, it is core to your Ogdoadic plays. Nauya is your searcher. It allows you to search out your Ogdoadic back row on summon, and that is critical for allowing you access to your Daybreak plays, which are the heart and soul of Ogdoadic builds. 3 Nunu, the other Ogdo starter, and also incredibly versatile, allowing you to get easy access to rank 4s, albeit just reptile ones, or Neff into your graveyard for future setup using your strike. 1 Curse. This is the monster that summons out your Nauya and gets your plays rolling, as well as being the target you usually want to tribute with your Daybreak. 1 Zoha. This card is here to pair with Nunu, as by sending Zoha with Nunu, then recovering Zoha to hand, you have access to an easy King of the Feral Imps. It can also be used to unbrick your hand. We don't run all that many, but things like Neff can be hard to get out of hand, and so using Zoha's other effect to add back and then get rid of this is great. 1 Night Sword Serpent. This card was always important, but now it's even better, since you'll usually want to go Kusanagi and Night Sword for your from deck tributes for your first ritual, allowing you to recur the ritual and get the free level 4 body. 1 Daybreak. This is probably the strongest single Ogdoadic card, allowing for up to 5 tokens, which is huge for link spam. It also allows you to recover things from banishment and send from deck. 2 Serpent Strike. This card is very nice. It allows you to continuously revive reptiles and also helps protect against hand traps, as if a monster hits the opponent's graveyard during the main, either players, you get to mill a reptile. This means if you have this on field and they try to stop your interactions like your Nauya or your Nunu, you can just send whatever card you meant to send with their effects with its. 1 Prosp. In a deck like this, having access to this many different starters and also this type of board breaker suite, having a peek at 6 cards is crazy. We also have the extra space to just be able to afford getting rid of that many cards. 1 Called by the Grave. You'd play more if it were at more. Thank God it's not. 3 Ash Blossom. Something you'll notice right away about the suite of non-engine here is this is mostly a breaker build. That's because with this deck being a 2+ combo card style deck, you don't want to be hand looping yourself for 2 or 3 hand traps. So I've chosen just to run the 2 hand traps that I find to be the most impactful in the most scenarios. Ash is great, obviously stopping searches, but also stopping Fulos and Perulia. 3 Imperm. While not the highest impact, I like how Imperm can stop things during your own turn as a breaker in conjunction with Droplet. 3 Fenrir. Being able to threaten, search, and use its banish effect all in one body is huge, especially if you get hit with something like a Shifter. It at least gives you something to end on. You're still in danger, but this is much better than just T-set pass. 3 Thrust. Talent is a villainous card, and so having access to it going second at double the copy count is incredible. It's also flexible going first, because even if you don't have access to a monster on your opponent's side of the field, you can just set an Imperm or a Purification at the very least. One final thing to note with Thrust is Curse gives the opponent a chance to summon a monster from their graveyard, usually being a hand trap. If they take that, you get a free hand rip basically off your talent. Lastly, 3 Droplet. Again, we're going for a board breaker approach. I chose this over a normal spell breaker because this can be set when you go first and used on your opponent's turn. Again, very powerful in conjunction with Imperm. You use Imperm, then you can use Droplet, sending that Imperm. Also with Fenrir, because you can use Fenrir, search out a Fenrir, and then the one in your hand is now just great fodder for that Droplet. The extra deck is pretty cool in this list. We play 2 King of the Feral Imps. I usually wouldn't, but you need it if you start with Nunu and you want to go into your full Mitsu, Ogdo, Abao combos, which we'll go over at the end of this video. 1 Link Spider, again, just a critical part of the climb. You'll use this to turn one of your Daybreak tokens into a monster with a different name, using that Link Spider and another token for Lizardos. Lizardos then gets you a draw, and if you don't have a monster in banishment, sets you up with one. You then link up into Unicorn. Unicorn then can, if you're going second, spin something through your opponent's field. Otherwise, you just need it as the Fiend to go into Abao. Abao is really great. She can, during your opponent's turn, pop things, or during ours, what we'll most likely be doing is using her to revive, preferably Neff, but if we have to, just something like Saji. Echidna is really cool. I think her attack reduction is underrated. Also, her searching, while it's annoying that it limits you to reptiles for the turn, being reptile locked now that we have huge, powerful boss monsters is not nearly as bad as it was. This was a critical problem that Ogdoadic had that Mitsurugi helped solve. IP Masquerena, giving us easy access to SP Little Knight during the opponent's turn. Access code, I just really like this card. It's great for closing out games, in addition to just being really powerful, uninteractable removal. 1 Nightmare Phoenix, partially here for the removal effect. It's actually mostly here as a bridge, a fire that you can then revive with Promethean. If you have access to your full combo plus 1 extender, Promethean becomes an extra layer of interruption. 1 Chain Coils, this is just an alternative. It's both a big reptile, which is nice if we're reptile locked, and also it can turn off hand interactions, which can be huge against some decks, and doesn't hurt us since we play very few hand traps. Though, not 0, so it does turn off our own Ash, but we're unlikely to have a hand at the end of our turn. This is kind of an all-in style deck until the opponent's turn, where our Futsu helps us recover more resources. And kind of as a last flex spot, we have 1 Stag Sovereign. This requires 2+ rip monsters, and when your opponent summons from deck or extra, pops 2 monsters non-targeting on the field, but must pop 2. Chain Coils and Stag also synergize because Chain Coils can very easily be recurred with its own revival effect to then link up into a Stag Sovereign, which at 33 is the highest attack value in our deck. Of the cards to be cut, these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are kind of all flex spots and can be used for different things, but I think Promethean is such a powerful card, especially in grind, that it's worth having around, especially when we can easily recur it using Neff, who can, if summoned off of Serpent Strike or Abao, recover anything from our graveyard. For the side deck, I play 3 Nib, just a great hand trap versus the kind of overextendy decks that don't have an on-field negate. 3 Lancia, great versus obviously Malice. 3 Droll, excellent versus Ryzeal. 3 Xyz Encore, also great versus Ryzeal. Versus Dweller, it can help drain those overlay materials, meaning you're not being locked out of your graveyard, because to us, the graveyard is everything. 2 Evenly Matched as a searchable Word Breaker off of Thrust, and 1 Dimensional Barrier as a searchable Flood off of Thrust. Overall, I really like Mitsurugi and what it does for Ogdoadic. I'm very happy that they are in type, they are reptiles, and so they very naturally synergize with Ogdoadic. Now, as I mentioned, there are a few different ways you can actually build the deck. One of those ways is using something like Nadir's Servant, because this can send a Garura from your extract to the graveyard to search out Dogmatica Maximus, who can then send a Ferrijit and a Herald of the Arclight to get you a draw and a search off that Herald. The downside of this engine is that both Nadir's Servant and Maximus lock you out of your extra deck, in addition to adding a brick in Maximus, as in hand in your opening it can be kind of hard to make full use of, but I still like the extension and removal, as you also have access to Entis off of the Nadir's Servant, which can easily clear things even on your own field. Similarly, Diviner of the Herald is another nice starter. This card has a very similar job, allowing you to just send from your extra deck a Herald and get that search, and there's even an argument to be made for running something like Manju of the 10,000 Hands, who's just a great level 4 who gets you a ritual monster or a ritual spell. But the main deck isn't the only place there are variations. Something that is notably missing here for anyone who's followed Ogdoadic builds over the past couple years is Cosmic Slicer Zerol, a very powerful floodgate that, when combined with Alien Shock Trooper M-Frame and Planet Pollutant Virus, turns off the opponent's monsters. They cannot activate while they have A counters. I still like this card, and you can still run it. I just found that I didn't want both of the trap bricks in the Planet Pollutant Virus and the Purification, and that the space it took up was unnecessary and could be seen by other things. But what's cool about Slicer is it's a great budget option for people who don't want to either buy the Abao or just don't like that line as much, because there's something to be said about just blanket not allowing your opponent to activate, putting their stuff in defense. And the last thing I'll mention is Sprite Sprint. People may have seen my video where I showed Sprite Sprint combos. This is another really nice budget alternative to Abao that gets you, again, bridging between your Ogdoadic stuff to your Mitsurugi stuff. Now, I wanted to go into a little more depth about the card count here. You can see this is a 50 card deck and not a 40, and part of that is Ogdoadic has to run a lot of bricks. Things like Curse, Neff, Zoha, Night Sword, these are cards you do not want to open, and a really simple way to stop seeing those is just to play more cards. The more cards you play, the less likely they are to see one individual. And while that can be bad for the cards you do want to see, that is also part of why we run the numbers we do. In this list, we play 18 go second cards, and we chose breakers over hand traps because we don't want to hand loop ourselves. And with that, it gives us a 90.49% chance to open 1 or more, and a 59% chance to open 2 or more. And that's only on 5 cards. That's not even accounting for going second where you have a 6th card. For our starters, we play 19 starters, giving us a 92% chance to open 1 and a 64% chance to open at least 2. The key takeaway here is that it's all about ratios. The number of cards we run doesn't actually matter as long as we have the right ratios of cards with the same job. So Nauya, Nunu, Saji, these are all starter cards. Thrust, Talent, Droplet, these are all breakers. They all have the same job, even though they don't have the same card text. Now we'll go over some of the combos you can do with this deck. The first is going to be Snake Rain. With it, you're going to discard and then send from your deck your Nauya, Nunu, Nef, and Curse. You'll revive Nunu with its own effect, tributing it for Curse, who will then summon and revive Nauya. Nauya will search out Daybreak here. We'll use Daybreak to tribute for 4 tokens. We'll use one of those for Link Spider. Link Spider and a token for Haggard Lizardos, who will banish Curse to draw us a card. This part is important as we need that card for playing in the Abao line. We will link up into Unicorn and then link up into Abao. Here we will use our Daybreak. This will allow us to send a Saji to our graveyard. With Abao, we will revive our Nef. Nef will then use its effect to revive our Saji. Saji will trigger, getting us access to Mitsurugi Ritual. We will make King of the Fair Limbs, who gets us access to Ame. We will Ritual Summon Ame by tributing from our deck Night Sword and Kusanagi. Kusanagi recovering the Ritual spell and Night Sword summoning itself. We will go up into IP Masquerena, using Ritual again to summon Futsu from our deck. We will use Ame's effect, searching out the Purification and summoning itself. Something to note, if you wanted to, you could use this spot to go for Prayers, and then use Prayers, tribute Futsu, then summon Futsu, search the Purification. I just prefer this line because at least if they nib us here, Futsu will come back, search us a card, and then we're able to at least recur our monsters on the opponent's turn. We set that in our end phase, our Abao comes back, and now our end board is an IP Masquerena with an easy body to then link up into our SP Little Knight for the double interaction that is. Abao allows us to, by discarding a card, either revive a monster or just pop a card on the field. Futsu will be reviving bodies from our graveyard. Ame is a hand rip / negate, and on summon, a board wipe. And then of course we have that great Purification to tribute and negate. Next, we'll go over our Nauya line. This will be done by having Nauya plus any monster you can put on the board. So we will use Nauya, send Curse, summon a monster, tribute that monster for Curse, and this should be very familiar. Curse will revive Nauya. Nauya will search out Daybreak, use Daybreak to make 4 tokens. And now the only difference between this and the Snake Rain line is on our end board, we just won't have that extra body. Like we had that King of the Feral Imps, which also could have just been Nef. We just won't have that, but we can easily revive something with Futsu for the easy SP. Abao here instead of just summoning Saji, summoning that King of the Feral Imps, searching Ame. Same 2, you're going to do Kusanagi and Night Sword. We will make our IP, we will Ritual Summon our Futsu, and we will search out our Great Purification. Again, in end phase, we will get back our Abao, and we have a very similar end board. We just have to wait for 1 revival off Futsu if we want to make SP without using any of the monsters we currently have on board. For the Nunu line, there are 2 variants of it. The first is if you don't have a level 4 in hand, so with it you'll send Zoha. Zoha will add itself to your hand. You'll summon back Nunu. You want to do this first because if they have a Bestial, and you summon Zoha first, they can then quick effect remove your Nunu from the graveyard. Summon Zoha, go into our King of the Feral Imps, and you'll see why we need 2 King. We'll search out Nauya, Nauya will send Curse, Curse will summon itself, Curse will summon Nauya, and Nauya will get Daybreak going into the same line we just saw with the Nauya line. The other Nunu play is if you do have a level 4, it doesn't have to be a reptile, you can instead send Nef, and now we can end on the same board we did with the Snake Rain replay. Since your Abao can then revive that Nef instead of just reviving the Saji. Overall, I'm really happy with this deck, and I'm really excited with how good Mitsurugi is. If you have any other builds, please let me know. Also, we have a Discord, so please feel free to join. I get a lot of ideas and advice from that Discord. Subscribe, like, it helps a lot. Otherwise, I'll see you next time.